Theater. I am here with Liana Finck, who wrote this book, How to Baby, but I also just want to talk about everything she does. So, Liana, you might not know this, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but I've been following you on Instagram forever. Whenever you went on Instagram, somehow it came into my feed, and I've been following your cartoons forever. And what I love about them is I feel like you're tapping into my brain.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
I
know,
know
I've never told you this.
that.
But
Thanks.
but just for people listening right now, what was really wonderful was back in, I don't know, 2021 or whenever, 2021, whenever Lady Parts came out, I had an excerpt published in the Atlantic. And I open the Atlantic, well, I open on my computer. So open on the computer, and I see that is a drawing by Liana Finck of two uteri walking hand in hand that's supposed to represent me and my friend Nora. And I actually started crying because it was just such a perfect exploration of our relationship to one another and the piece in general and how she had told me, just get the hysterectomy. What are you waiting for? And I contacted you, if you'll recall, and I said, oh my God, I would love to have a copy of that cartoon. And you sent it to me. And then we went on a walk in a graveyard.
That was later. I kept putting you off because I was about to give birth and I was moving, and it was so confusing because I like desperately wanted to hang out with you and I wasn't used to just not hanging out with people.
Yeah,
And
no, I know. And then you
you
had the
stuck with
baby, and then
me.
we had to sort of
Yeah.
figure out with the baby and the dog how to meet up and what would be the best time and place for that. And really a lot of that is in this hysterically funny. I I read this again this morning and I laughed out loud numerous times. And what I love about this book is there's so many books when I was pregnant with my first child back in 1995, which is like the Pleistocene era at this point. There was no internet, there was no there was no cell phones. It was, I guess there was an internet, but I didn't have an internet yet. But the types of books that we were reading were uh what is that? Oh my God. Expecting what to expect when you're expecting. That was the big book of my generation. But this is not an advice or an how-to book. I mean,
Therapy.
by its own name, it says a no advice given guide to motherhood with drawings. But what I really think this book would be great as, and why I'm interviewing now, is I think it'd be a perfect Father's Day gift. And I'll tell you why. And do you have the book in front of you? Do you have a copy of it in front of you?
I have one under my desk. I'll be right back.
Okay. So while you're getting that, I got to put on my glasses to tell you which page it's on because the numbers are too small for my aging eyes. Okay, page 190. And I actually wrote a little note up here. And the note I wrote to myself was weaponized incompetence.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing that
90.
these numbers are small, and I realized that's because I didn't leave enough margin, and I remember telling the art director like the numbers are too close to everything and this is the fix.
So anyway, on page 190, um, there's a father figure, and he's saying, but hard things are easier for you than for me. And I just think like I wrote a note to myself, weaponized incompetence. And I think that
Totally.
there's so many instances in so many marriages after a baby is born that the difference between what the mother's doing and what the father's doing really can cause issues. Talk to
Mhm.
me about all of this. Like, give me the origin of the book. How did you think about it? Where do you get your cartooning ideas? Just, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but let's just talk about this.
Thank you. Thanks for the amazing talking. And I love that you think this would be a good Father's Day gift. This book came out of drawing, like little drawings that I was making as I was pregnant and as I was having a baby and raising the baby. It ends when the baby is one. And I think the secret reason for this book was trying to wrestle with what we're talking about, the marriage stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a larger part of this book than one would expect. And it's the part that I think is the most immediate.
But more than immediate, it's sort of
Yeah.
resonant for so many people I know. I know that, I mean, you have this whole funny riff on playgrounds and what the playground is like. But I do know when women would get real at the playgrounds, and you have this funny drawing of like a dad, sort of like this creature, this mythical creature of the dad at the playground. But when
That's the punchline.
yes,
Yeah.
but when mothers got together at the playground and would actually get real with each other, over and over again, you would hear, why am I in charge of all this?
Mhm.
Why is my job, why is my life taking such a back seat? I had a baby. I wanted that baby. In my case, I had three babies. I wanted those babies, but it
Mhm.
seemed to me and to so many women I know that society doesn't set us up for this. They don't give us paid maternity leave. They don't give us affordable childcare. And the patriarchy in general, or just the way that marriages and male and female relationships in those marriages have tended to work throughout the centuries, just rely on mothers to do the bulk of the work.
Mhm. Yeah, and we're coming from such different places than our husbands are if we have a husband. Like we've been, I don't know, the odds are so stacked against us. Like our husband doesn't want to do half the work. We don't know, we like aren't raised entitled enough to expect that, and society expects us to do everything, and it's just coming from everywhere. And yeah, I was trying to untangle it. I was trying, while I was making this book, I think I was trying to build an argument to bring to my husband to kind of rationalize what was going on. And I thought that if I explain it to him, then we will make things better. And what I did do was explain it to myself. So that was
Yeah.
helpful. I
Yeah,
did.
no, that's a really great way of explaining that you're explaining. And I do get the sense in reading this, and again, I loved it so much that I read it twice. And I think it's a really important document. I mean, it works on so many levels. It's funny, it's a great gift. I would give this to any new mother. And I said just now, I would give it to any new father, because what it really gets into, using humor, and insofar as, comedy equals tragedy plus time, right? You have made comedy, and deeply funny comedy, out of things that are so complicated and so uncomfortable and so deeply disturbing about having a child, particularly in America, where there's just no support whatsoever. And
Yeah.
um, I mean, like even just this little drawing, I'm still on the same page, but this little drawing here where it says his priorities, it's a
Mhm.
pyramid, what he planned to do, and then anything else. And then her priorities, what she planned to do, and whatever just came up. And it's just this like very precarious little triangle holding up the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Um,
I still feel like that, like my work day is just always eaten up by, oh, I need to plan a dentist appointment, and oh, I need to go like rush and pick my kid up from school because all the last minute things are fall in my lap.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I'm a parent now for 29 years. I have an 18-year-old kid, and he finally can go to the doctor by himself as of yesterday or 2 days ago was his birthday. So he broke his arm. So he's at his follow-up appointment with the orthopedist. And of course, who gets the text saying, you need to pay the $30 copay? Me, right? So
Yeah.
it's just constantly like we are the default parent. I'm
Mhm.
going to switch gears for a second and just say, like, one of the other funniest parts of this, which I just was roaring, was um, you have this whole thing about giving birth and, pretending to push hard, but you don't really want to push that hard because you're afraid of throwing up.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, how did you get into my brain?
Did you have that too?
I had that same feeling
I've
of like,
never spoken about this with anyone. Like what, like first of all, it didn't, I had an epidural, so it really felt like fake, the pushing. It
yeah,
felt like
because you don't know what you're
performance.
doing.
Yeah. And I also knew that if I pushed hard, like the pushing, what I felt of my body was the upper part, and the upper part wanted to throw up.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't throw up, but I had that really nauseous feeling. And I also had the feeling of when they're saying push harder, push harder.
Yeah.
If you have the spinal tap or whatever, it's not the spinal tap, the
Yeah.
epidural, you don't know what pushing hard means at
No.
that point. So you're
And
just,
you're like, they're like asking you to like to sense when it's time to push. It's very important that it comes from you. So you're kind of looking at the monitor where it tells you when it's time to push because they know.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Because you can see the rise and fall
Yeah.
of the
And you're
contraction.
pretending that you're feeling it, but you're not. And I didn't throw up, but I almost didn't deliver the baby. And I noticed that everyone was getting worried. So I pushed a little harder.
Right. You're like, okay, how do I
I
do
think I did.
it?
And here he is.
My daughter is now in her OBGYN rotation at med school, and she's been just holding women's legs. She's like, all I do is hold women's legs as they push. And she said, like the other day, she pushed for 4 hours, or some woman was pushing for 4 hours, and my daughter has uncomfortable shoes. So, like, of
Oof.
course, what do? I like go online, I send her a pair of hokas.
Focus are good.
Yeah,
Is she liking this rotation?
yeah, for doing your OBGYN rotation.
Yeah,
Um,
like while you're giving birth, it's so intense that I think my immediate reaction was like, oh, I really want to be like an obstetric nurse. Like when something's intense, I want to stay there.
yeah, no, I thought the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
really, it's I will never forget giving birth for the first time. The second and third went so fast that I will forget those. But the first time when it was just like 18 hours of labor, 3 hours of pushing, oh my God, is this baby ever going to come
Yeah,
out? And
me
you
too.
bond, you kind of trauma bond with the people in that room.
You do. It's so vivid. I had not very careful nurses when I was in early labor. I was induced, so I started in the hospital, and then like right as things got got real, like I got this incredible nurse, and I remember her so well, and I feel like she's like my family.
Right, totally. So, I mean, when did making cartoons, and it's not just cartoons. I don't want to say, I don't want to limit it by saying they're cartoons. It's more than cartoons. It's kind of like you take philosophy, sort of life philosophies, and throw them into these very simple drawings that are also incredibly complicated. When did that start in your life?
It started when I was about 28, actually. I've been drawing all my life. My mom claims I started drawing as a tiny baby and that it was freakish, but I don't know whether to believe her. But I've been drawing always, and I've always loved to draw. And at some point, I guess my medium was like the margins of my homework.
Mm-hmm.
I always assumed that would just naturally turn into fine art. And I had kind of an uncomfortable stint in art school because it didn't naturally turn into fine art. It didn't work. And I kind of had to like unlearn all the rules I learned in art school and undepress myself because I was a depressed teenager in early 20 something. And I like deliberately came up with this simpler style, which I think like matured when I was 28, but there was like maybe between 24 and 28 was when I was working on that.
And then how did you turn it into a career? I mean, it's one thing to draw and doodle, and it's another thing to actually earn your living doing this. You have been incredibly successful in terms of the books that you've published. Your Instagram account was huge. Again, I came to your work by accident. I didn't know you. I had no idea who you were. But once I started following your work, it was almost like an addiction. I couldn't not look at it because it's almost like you're like the philosopher of our age. Like you are tapping into some sort of female psyche thing that I've only ever really seen is it Chast or
Yeah,
Chaste?
cast.
Roz Chast be able to do. And I know she's actually a mentor of yours.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet? Did she reach out to you? Did you reach out to her?
I reached out to her when I was 15. I sent her a fan email, a fan letter, And she wrote back, which is incredible. And like, I understand it more and more, like as I become a professional and you don't want to get weird over personal emails from strangers. Like she wrote this long letter with all these pictures on it, and it was incredible. Um, and then I think we kept writing. I felt so shy. It tapered off, I think, because I was so shy and I didn't write back for a year often. And and then we met in person at a talk she gave when I was maybe 27, and I had just been published by the New Yorker. So we became friends then.
Yeah, at when you were 27. And how did you get that first cartoon into the New Yorker? Is it just a matter of just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks?
It's different now, I think, but back then it was harder to get in, and once you were in, you were in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were lucky, you got a contract. I think I'm the last contract for a cartoonist at the New Yorker. And so what you did is you had to come every week and meet with Bob Minkoff and sit in a room with these mostly older man cartoonists who are very lovely and of their time, and a bunch of them have died, and it's really sad. But yeah, so it took maybe 3 or 4 months of coming to the room and sitting with the old men, and finally one of mine was sold, and I knew at that point, like, this is my career, which is not um it's not that simple, but that's how it felt at the moment.
Right. So wait, I'm a little confused. So you went to these meetings with the old dudes who are the
Yeah.
cartoonists, but
Yeah,
you did not yet have a contract?
exactly. Yeah, a lot of cartoonists now, no one gets a contract, but in those days many people didn't, and very lucky people did, and that meant you were a regular and you get paid a bit more. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a contract after a year or two.
Wow. And what was your first cartoon that was published in the New Yorker? What was the scenario?
It was Slinky's climbing upstairs to spawn. I think my idea was a little bit different, and Bob Minkoff, who was the editor, tweaked it and asked me to resubmit it like that. So I don't feel, it doesn't make me laugh so much, but
Right.
I'm very glad it got in, and I don't care at all what makes me laugh, it's
Right.
a job. Yeah.
Right. And what when you are seeking inspiration for these cartoons, is it just sort of like you're on a walk and you have an idea, or you're sitting at a desk and you have an idea, or some sort of situation happens and you think, "Oh my God, that would be a great cartoon." What is your inspiration, if there is any specific one?
Before I had my son, I had two streams of coming up with cartoons. The New Yorker cartoons are mostly a bit more distant from my life. They're more just funny scenarios. So I would just clear a day and I would like walk or run or take trains and just think that day. I miss that
Yeah.
luxury. Um, my Instagram cartoons that I made more in the past, those came from when something was really bothering me. I would work it out in cartoon form, and that feels very personal. That's really how, like, that comes from me. Um, and now I have ideas all the time, and I try to grab my phone and email them to myself, and then maybe once every couple weeks I'll sit down and draw them all.
Yeah.
And that's how I do both my New Yorker cartoons and my Instagram cartoons. I'd like to build some more like free drawing time into my days. I think it's time again.
Well, you had I don't know exactly what page this was on, but you had a little schedule there. It was 9 to 1, you're with the baby, 1 to 5, you get your time, and then 5 to 9 a.m., 5 p.m. to 9
Yeah,
a.m. with the
exactly.
baby again. Um,
Yeah, I
has that
like
changed a little bit with childcare?
It's changed a lot. Yeah, that cartoon was when my husband was unemployed during the pandemic. It was a tough time. Like, we had a ton of changes. So to explain why this chapter is so very vivid, it was an intense time.
Right.
Um, so I insisted that it was also pandemic time, so we didn't really want to have people coming into our apartment. So we divided the days, and we decided the day starts at like 7 a.m. and ends at like, I don't, let's say it starts at 7 and ends at 5 or whatever, and we divide that equally. And then the rest of the time we don't talk about, but that's my time.
Right.
So now, yeah, things are not equal, but my husband has gotten a job and that's a game changer and he loves his job. And I am focusing more on um emotional uh presentness than exact equality. And I think that is what is needed in my particular marriage. I don't want to be on a soapbox
Right.
talking about this, but it's a specific marriage and we each have our personalities. And I think we really are getting to a place of like feeling like a team, and that's been amazing.
That's really great.
What's less amazing is that I feel like very lost in my career, and I believe that has a lot to do with not having enough time to work. But I think like if I feel since I feel like I have a partner and things feel like they're going well, and I do have daycare and my son is getting older and I am getting wiser, it's not forever. It's getting better.
Yeah, I can tell you again, after 29 years of parenting, that there's ebbs and flows to it. And that even, there'll be a moment. The weird part is when they're teenagers and you think, oh, they're grown, you don't need to be around anymore. But somebody mentioned to me, a shrink mentioned to me this idea of the potted plant parent, which is like the teenager wants to know you're in the home just because they want somebody there. They don't want to fucking
Yeah.
talk to you. They just want to know that you're there in case they need something. They will never call upon it, or maybe like once in a blue moon. But when I heard that term, the potted plant parent, it really clarified a lot to me about like what it means to parent a teenager. So use that as you will when you're
Yeah,
going through that.
I'll hold
There
on to
are
it.
moments like, toddlerhood when they can kind of they're like so intent on their own play. And then maybe like 7, 8, they really want you again to play dumb games with them over and over again, like Candyland and Jupiter
Horrid.
ladders. And oh my God, I can't even. So I just feel like you're gonna have these ebbs and flows of time.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're just not only just aware of them, but you're using your challenges to fill these amazing books. I'm so curious to see what you do next. Do you have a plan for a new book that you want to do right now? Or are you just like, I'm publishing this book, I'm not thinking about the next one right now?
Oh gosh, no, I handed in a well, I have a kid's book that I am about to hand in, and I just handed in a grown-up book manuscript that I, it's the first time I've written something as opposed to writing and drawing, and it's similar to this one. It's kind of a take on a how-to book where it's, it's called What to Do When. I'm forgetting the subtitle, but it's like an awkward person's guide to life or something, and it's just like a list of all these scenarios that most people just know how to handle that maybe you the reader do not, and I do not, where like what do you do when someone's taking up the middle of the sidewalk? Like where do you go? Stuff like that. And I'm going to add pictures to it. I hope my editor reads it at some point. And after that, I'm going to make another real book, and I'm really excited to that. And to me, a real book is a comic book with fantastical elements, and it's a story you can get lost in. And that you're kind of I'm generating it as I'm writing it, and that's my favorite thing to make, not because I'm good at it, but because I love getting lost in my work.
Right. And do you have a map of what that comic book is going to be, or characters, or an idea of the story itself?
It's called She Devil, and it was going to be about my marriage. And now that my marriage seems to be doing better, I don't think I can do that. So it's called She Devil, and it's about a woman who is made to feel like the devil and who sees herself as the devil and her hijinks. And I don't know what those will be now.
Well, you know what? You could probably still do it and tap into the old you, and it would be very useful, I think, again,
Yeah.
to a lot of marriages. And I think what maybe you don't realize, or maybe you do, but that you're writing in the same way that, I hate to bring Taylor Swift into anything, but like people say that Taylor Swift appeals to so many people because she's telling these very specific stories to her and they feel universal to all of us. I wouldn't equate you with Taylor Swift at all. I think that you have a much more dark and wonderful sensibility, and are deeply, deeply funny in these pages. But you're telling often a very specific tale of your own marriage, of your own birth story, of your own situation in a playground. And then it becomes this kind of universal tale that we all experience when we walk into a playground, when we are in marriages right after having a baby. And so it's, I just think it's really beautiful. And I thank you so much. And I'm actually looking at the time right now, and it's 4:27. And I know you have to pick up your kid at daycare at 4:40 on the dot. So I'm going to press stop on
Okay.
the recording, have a quick chat with you afterwards. But thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Deb. Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to press stop.